Welcome. It's time for another episode of It Takes a Viking, the official podcast series of the Salem State University Alumni and Friends community. My name is Mike Mitchell, Director of Engagement here at Salem State. Very excited to welcome from the class of 1994, Erin Brenner, the owner of Right Touch Editing. Erin, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Mike. I'm doing well.
We are very excited to have you on the show with us today to talk a little bit about your Salem State journey, what you've been up to since then, and kind of what life has looked like for you these last several years. You have been quite a busy person. So we are going to dive right in with the first question I always like to ask. What brought you to Salem State and how did you end up here?
I'm from Haverhill, and I was looking for a college nearby, kind of. Salem's a bit of a stretch, but I had a friend of a friend who was a student at Salem, and he graciously gave my friend and I a tour, and I really loved the campus. I knew I wanted to study English, and Salem has always had a good reputation for English, the English department. And it was like the easiest decision I think I made. I was like, no, this is the place for me. I want to be here.
Easy enough. And so you graduated in 1994. You've got your degree in English. Talk a little bit about, I know you've pursued some additional education after your time at Salem State. What did that look like? And then we'll kind of dive into the Right Touch piece, and then we'll work backwards from there a little bit.
Sure. I got a master's in English from Northeastern University. After graduating from Salem, I worked as a proofreader for a little bit, and I enjoyed it, but I wanted to do something more. And despite being kind of discouraged by my advisor, I was still interested in maybe teaching English. And so I went to Northeastern to get that training. Only they didn't have enough TAs. So I ended up having to work and do my master's degree. And so it took a little longer. I ended up with no teaching experience, but I continued to proofread and continued to like that. And so even though I enjoyed doing the degree, it really didn't pay off, I think, too well. I went in a completely different path.
And that's led to kind of the context under which you and I first met, which was at a panel presentation for different careers that you could have in English. And now, as principal, owner, editorial director of Right Touch Editing, what is Right Touch? What does it do? And as an entity, what is it all about?
So Right Touch Editing is an editorial agency. I like to say it's a boutique agency. There's maybe 8 or 10 folks who subcontract for me. And we do primarily editing for businesses, universities, government agencies, but all the marketing materials, the reports, the things that really weigh down an organization, that have to be right, that need to go out on time. And generally, the folks working on them do not have time for this. And so we step in and help them get these things done. And I've been doing that since 2009. I started as a solo freelancer. Had some adventures along the way. And in 2017, 2018, I expanded into an agency where I just really got tired of saying no to prospective clients. A good job would come along, and I was lucky enough to have built up the business and be busy and couldn't take it on. I said, well, this is silly.
In 2009, when you started, what was kind of the genesis for you to say, I'm ready, this is what I want to do, this is where I see myself going next? Did you have kind of like a flash of insight that said, this is the time for me now?
In a way, since it had probably been a couple of years, I had been kind of bored in my job. I was a copy editor for a website, and I enjoyed it, but there was nowhere to grow. And it felt frustrating. But at the time, we had young kids at home. So it was also easier to stay in a job I could do. I knew I could do it well. I worked from home, and it was very convenient. But the company that owned the website went through a lot of changes. There was a year where we had three different insurances in one year, and it was so much stress. We'd get a new VP. They would have a new vision for what the website was going to do and what I could do for it and how I could advance, and nothing ever paid off. And I said, okay, that's it. It just got to a point where we got yet another new VP with yet another vision. And I respect that they have this vision, and it just doesn't always work out. But for me, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I cannot do this anymore. I'm jumping off the cliff. And I quit my job, and really dug into doing this freelance editing thing full time.
And I would contend that it's paid off. I mean, you've published, I think you've written four of your own books. You've got a pretty robust client list, and it kind of leads nicely to this next question. As you look over your shoulder, you see the Chicago Guide for Freelance Editors, and if I'm not mistaken, that's your most recent project, right?
That is.
So what is the Chicago Guide for Freelance Editors, and why is it important for people to read it?
So this is my book, all about launching a freelance editing business, getting it running, and importantly, how to keep it running, right? Not just, here's what you do to set up, but how you take care of your clients, how you take care of yourself, some of the back office stuff. And there isn't a lot out there on how to launch a freelance editing business that takes into account those things that editors need to be aware of, and nothing really that guides you through your career. So this is the thing that's kind of missing, and I wish I had it when I was starting out. So I feel like it does fill a gap. Um, it's been very well received, which is reassuring. And
But you know you're doing something right.
all right, okay, I've done this. This is good. People like it. And there's a request for more, right? How do we grow the business beyond the basics? How do we deal with life-changing events where we might have to step back from our business? And I think importantly, and for me, a key concept I want to conquer is, how do we retire? What
Mm.
does that look like? So I'm hoping to keep writing about this topic, because I think there are just so many of us who freelance now, and then we need this kind of guidance.
And I think that last piece that you just mentioned about how do you retire, right, is that it's something that you writing is a gift and a skill that you can do into your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but at the same time, you don't you don't want to have to do it. You have to, I would imagine, want to do it. Um, and so when you've decided to put the pen down or the pencil down, you have to say, am I going to be ready to do that? And I think that's going to be a big piece that you've just touched on. That'll be important for folks to know. So, and I'm assuming, I'm making an assumption that the Chicago Guide, is that like a hat tip to the Chicago Style Guide kind of a thing, or
It
what was the
is.
origin of the name?
So this was published by the University of Chicago Press,
Ah, okay.
and they have a line of books for writers and editors, and it's closely associated with the Chicago Style Manual. So they had reached out to me and said, "This is a book we want to do. Would you be interested in doing it?" And I said, "Yes, I would."
Without question.
Oh yeah,
And we'll link to the book in the text of the post, that when we share this on socials as well, so people, if they're interested in checking it out, can certainly link to it, and we'll link to your website as well and all of that too. So um, I think, going back for just a moment, as I mentioned, you and I had met at the Careers in English panel, and it was a great opportunity for successful graduates in the field to meet with students and talk about kind of the robust path you can take with a degree in English, that may not always be kind of at the forefront. Like, as you mentioned, there's probably some conventional wisdom behind getting the English degree, becoming a teacher, and doing your 35 years and things like that. But there was yourself, who owns an editing business. There were folks that were college professors. There was somebody who was a paralegal that had talked about, the background and making sure that the court documents were prepared correctly and things like that. And so, um, for people that may be watching, for students that may be watching, um, I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing just kind of from your own personal experience, maybe a couple chestnuts of wisdom in terms of how the degree prepared you, and obviously you've had a great career in editing, but kind of um, what are some of the benefits to you in pursuing that degree in English, kind of.
Well, I did the degree because I love to read, and that was the degree that would let me do that. I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. And that I think is the perennial question for English majors. What am I going to do with this? And the answer really is anything that requires you to use your critical thinking skills, that requires a certain degree of writing or editing expertise, because that is what you have. But being the critical thinker, that's crucial. That's the thing that we don't teach too well to young people and is so needed once you get out into the real world. And so that panel we had folks who did all kinds of things, but all of them were using their writing skills. All of them were using their critical thinking skills. And so if you're doing an English degree because you love the language, uh, I always think it's good to follow your passion. And then it takes some creativity, takes some research, and a lot of trial and error to figure out, okay, this is my passion. How do I use it to earn a living, to keep the roof over my head? And I feel like writing and editing are things that are kind of obvious, but in today's business world, there are so many jobs where there is a lot of writing and editing, and I would just encourage folks to go out and explore, to talk to other professionals, other alum. What do you do? What does that look like? And see where your interests take you, and to try things out. Absolutely.
I always recommend it, especially with students, but young professionals and professionals of any age, is that um, yeah, if you're curious, send somebody a note and say, "Can I have 15 minutes of your time? I would love to learn more about what you do and how you got to be where you are." And I know that you're somebody that is very active on LinkedIn as well, as some other social media channels. So we'll also put that in the comment or in the text for this conversation when we share it on social as well, so that if folks want to kind of follow you on LinkedIn and see your journey and where you're off to next. I know you do speaking engagements and things like that, and so that kind of segues really nicely, as I understand. Congratulations are in order as well, because you are the recipient of the 2024 Robinson Prize, I learned recently. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask, for the sake of those that are watching, what is the Robinson Prize? I know what it is, but I want to be able to illustrate it for them.
The Robinson Prize is awarded by ACES, the Society for Editing, and it's awarded just about every year to an editor who has um, significantly contributed to the art of editing, to the community, to uh, the career of editing. And so I was awarded that for the work, not just for the work on the book, but for volunteering. For I write a blog, so I've been writing a long time about freelance editors and what they need and how to do things, and just generally helping to raise up the entire um, industry, I suppose, of editing.
So with that, and I imagine, kind of as you've already alluded to, that there is it's probably a reflection of a body of work as opposed to just 1 year of you know continuous contribution to the field, right? And so, you've got over 20 years experience. You've got several books. You've got this terrific client list. Um, but I'm curious, what gets you the most excited about the work that you do? I mean, as you look back and you go,
Mhm.
"Wow, I've done so much." Like, what still stokes your fires these days about what you're doing?
These days, it's about helping other editors. Um, I I love subcontracting. I love the agency model um, because I get to hire somebody and give them some work. And by building a community for the team, we connect with each other. We often help each other out, not just with editing questions, but with business questions or sharing jobs. And I just love bringing that opportunity to other editors. It's not a career you're going to make oodles of money at. It's tough. And of course, AI is scaring the pants off us all. Um, and I do think we'll make it through that, but it's through talking to each other and thinking things through and having that community that makes it easier to have this career that we all love, but it is tough sometimes to live with.
If you were an aspiring author or a potential client of yours, and someone wanted to start the process of working with you, let's look at it twofold, right? So,
Mhm.
you're a business owner, you have a need for editing and communications professional. Kind of what does that process look like from beginning to end? Is it do you, not necessarily getting into the weeds of pricing itself, but what is your model? Do you go as a month? Is it by project? How does that work?
It really depends on the need of the client. Most often, we're pricing by the project. So, if someone has a project and they contact us, and we have a conversation, we figure out what their needs are, and that we can deliver it and put the project together for them. But for some clients, it's an ongoing need, and they drop me an email. They hit me up on Slack and they, okay, I've got another article, or I've got a new report, and can you do it for us? And that's really the value of the model I have, because these are things that maybe don't come on a schedule. It's the, okay, we finally finished this report. I know we haven't talked to you in 3 months. Do you have anybody? And the answer is always yes. Yes, I
Yeah.
do. Because that's what's hard for them, is having this need that's inconsistent, and not knowing if somebody's going to be available, and to have someone that you can call and know they're going to be available for you, that's gold. It really is. That's what helps get the job done.
And then conversely, if you're an aspiring author who's got a documented manuscript that you want to take to the next step, what does working with Right Touch Editing look like there?
So it really depends again on their needs, but
Yeah.
an aspiring author will contact us. We'll talk about where they are in their process. um, how do they want to publish? Why are they publishing? We get into the real uh, nitty gritty of this project, so that we can help them define what the process will look like. Are you going to submit this to a publisher? Are you going to self-publish? And if you're going to self-publish, how are you going to do that? And we can help them define what their needs are. So maybe you need some book coaching or developmental editing first, which is the very beginning of the process. The structure of your book, uh, the goals of it, how it all is going to fit together. But maybe you've done a lot of work already, and we can jump right in and do copy editing, where we're looking at grammar and usage and style. Uh, Maybe you don't know how to hire a designer. You don't know how to do these next steps. We can coach you through them and help connect you to folks who can do these things for you. So it becomes a real customization for an individual author.
Okay. And then I'm always curious to know, as someone who works in within the creative space as an editor, as a writer, um, what are you reading, and what are you watching, and what are you listening to these days to keep your creative juices flowing?
Well, I think one of the reasons I stuck with business topics is because I really value my fiction time. And for some editors, if you're a fiction editor, some folks love it and they continue to read fiction. I cannot read the fiction if I'm also editing it. It then
Mm,
becomes work, and I really need that fiction time. So I do read a lot of fiction. I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, and Victorian novels. I just started *The Prime Minister* by Anthony Trollope. So I'm looking forward to all the juicy but completely irrelevant political arguments. I don't have to care how it comes out because it's dead and gone. Um, so I do. I dive deep into a lot of fiction, um,
okay.
TV watching, and book reading.
Very good. Very good. And if you were not doing what you're doing now, what do you think you would be doing instead?
Oh, I'm so close, I think, to teaching, but it just never happened for me. The opportunities were not there. I still think I would like that. I have taught um, copy editing
Okay.
for the University of San Diego, so completely online, and I enjoyed that. Um, but I have daydreams about being a librarian and just being surrounded by books all day, or um, owning a bookstore. Except that I hate retail, so I'm not sure how well that would work out. But again, being surrounded by beautiful books all day, that sounds great.
All right. All right. So still within the craft, likely, but
Yeah.
maybe not necessarily in this role. Got it. Okay. Um, so the last question then that I would love to ask you is, as I mentioned at the top, we met through your engagement in a panel conversation talking to current students, and there must have been some affinity to the university still because you answered that call when it was placed last summer. So what does being a member of this community and being a Salem State Viking mean to you?
It really means supporting the students um, in any way you can. When I was at Salem State, I commuted from Haverhill every day, which was brutal. I don't recommend it. But I worked part time. I paid my own tuition. It was hard. It was hard. And, you know, at one point, I just didn't have the funds for my semester, couldn't pay for it. And I went into the financial aid office and they worked it out with me. They kept me in school. And you don't see that everywhere. And it's invaluable because I don't know how many of us can get ahead without a college education. And I so valued that. I so appreciated that I want to make sure that if there's something I can do for current students to help keep them moving forward, I want to be able to do that.
I don't know if I could put a bow on it any better. Um, that's what I think that's a great way to say it, and I think in the work that I do here at the college, that's one of the things that generationally I just love is that the origin story for so many of our students from the 50s and 60s and 70s to now is still similar in terms of where they're coming from and how they're getting started here, and hopefully they in the future will, like you, continue to pay it forward for Vikings to come and help them meet the moments that they haven't yet met. So Erin, really appreciate your time today and sharing your wisdom and your insights with us. I know we'll stay in touch as time goes on. Thank you again. Just really appreciate everything you've shared with us today. And I want to thank everybody for watching. And we'll share all of Erin's contact information, website, LinkedIn, things like that. So those that may be interested in learning more and connecting with her will be able to do so. Until next time, though, this has been another episode of It Takes a Viking, the official podcast of the Salem State University Alumni and Friends community. My name is Mike Mitchell, Director of Engagement here at Salem State. Thanks for watching.